Okay, I think we're live. You can watch the comments. I've got too many screens, or not enough screens, I guess, because I've got like all the news stuff and yada yada. No chat box for me, or a very small one at least. So Duck is on community engagement duties.
I'll do my best.
Great.
Shouldn't be too difficult. Someone says, "Hey, Cred." That is rude.
Yeah, rude as fuck. Okay, cool. That sounds like stuff is working. So, hi, it's an early Casual Friday from us. First of all, get the FTX app if you haven't already. Buy altcoins and NFTs before they go down another 99%. It's a great way to build some family bonds and relationships. I don't think my sister is outperforming me anymore, given Solana's down like 80 whatever percent. So finally, order is back in the universe. You see, the only way I can start to match her performance is not by me making money, just her fucking losing it. So that's good. Also, you might be able to tell, voice-wise, I'm sick as a dog, and I've been sick for like a month, essentially, which just hasn't been fun. I'm not going to get into the whole vid, cough, yada yada stuff, because whatever, there's literally no upside to that. No one ever wins. So you know, I'm just going to try to focus on getting better, and then if I just get a coughing fit, I will mute my mic, and the duck will entertain you, I'm sure. What else was I going to say? Yeah, the reason the stream is early is because, well, the original plan was Don was going to go on a date, right? But for the second time now, a girl cancelled on him like on the same day. Now I don't know what the chat thinks, but like, if it happens once, yeah, bad luck. You know, plans change. You don't read into it. But if it happens twice, again, the same day cancellation because, oh look, I've got COVID. I'm starting to see a bit of an early trend, right? So my thesis is that you give off this, like, you know, serial killer energy the day before the date, or like on the day of the date, and you start maybe messaging them like every 2 or 3 minutes. Be like, I can't wait. Wow, you look good, you know, when you haven't seen her yet, and all of this shit. So maybe your date-to-day approach needs a bit of refinement. Maybe just like delete the contact and don't speak to them for, you know, until you see them. There's got to be a better way than this, right?
I mean, that must have been the problem because that's essentially what I did.
Oh no! Oh
No. No, it's just unfortunate coincidences, I think. But we'll see. If this happens again, I'll join your camp and be like, oh shit, do I give this like the serial killer vibe? I don't think so, but I mean, who knows? I'm in crypto, right? Mental illness is plentiful in this space, so maybe I've caught some.
You should tell her I bought the bottom of this BTC crash, and she'd be like, okay, you know, I'm not feeling sick anymore. Let's go on a date. Just send her like the screenshot of all of your fills.
Jesus.
And then be like, I need one more fill or something, you know, something like that.
That's the wrong way around, though.
Yeah, well, kind of. I think it's you can just about.
You can make it work.
You can make it work. The idea is there. So part of the reason I'm actually distracted is because just before we went live and before we do market stuff, yada yada. So, we both know Crypto Wendy, right? She's a content creator, YouTuber, organizes meetups, all sorts of good stuff, right? And she made a tweet saying, "At this, let me just bring it up because this actually sort of tilted me, as always. And I think it's because I'm sick. I just get tilted so much easier than I would regularly, right?" But the tweet says, "At this point in my life, I want the best quality of life for my daughter." Agreed. Moving to El Salvador is an option.
Oof.
Like my good friend Mark Moss said, go where you are treated best, good night.
Jesus.
And this is a person living in the United States of America, seriously contemplating moving to El Salvador. Now, here's the thing, right? There's a real Bukele type of obsession going on the internet. And it's not for like the worst reasons, because the basic premise is for Bitcoin number to continue to go up, or one of the narratives that hasn't fully materialized yet, is the argument Sailor made and others are making are about like nation state adoption, right? And the sort of game theoretic implications of what happens geopolitically if one country does it, do their neighbors do it? And there's like a lot of interesting threads there, right? So because Bukele is essentially the first, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, not that I give a fuck, because he was the first, you know, there's some veneration going on that, you know, someone's done it, and therefore once one person's done it, it's much easier for a second person to do it, a third person, etc. Once that chasm has been broken, right? And also, you know, he'll post about McDonald's and about buying the dip, and just becomes this kind of relatable blue check character to whom people are, you know, comfortable to cozy up with. But I just think, you know, let's take a step back, especially if you're talking about moving your family there. So, you know, Ansem, probably one of the smartest guys, absolutely love him. He just says, honest question, is El Salvador a good place for families to relocate to over other countries? I have a very different perception. Spoiler, you're right, but maybe it is incorrectly biased. And then I just, you know, I replied just again minutes before this saying, head of state with a check mark buys orange coin off his phone and joins in on a couple of memes, and we choose to collectively ignore or forget that his regime is an authoritarian one plus one of the most violent places in the world. I just feel like that's been lost because he buys orange coin, and nation states buying orange coin may be bullish, even though you know, the chart doesn't seem to reflect it on a higher time frame. But I think it's important to like understand that you can argue these two things are consistent. A, nation states buying Bitcoin is a good thing. B, Bukele is a cunt. You know, I think you can argue those two things and be entirely consistent. And I'm even willing to concede the argument that because, you know, what type of countries are going to be the first to adopt Bitcoin as sort of legal tender or some sort of as part of a monetary basket, whatever, it's probably not going to be your G8 countries. You know, it's not going to be USA and United Kingdom and all these other places. It's probably got to start in other places in the world, and then if it picks up, it picks up. If it doesn't, maybe it just becomes consigned to sort of South American, Latin American specific game theory, whatever. But like, just because someone's done it doesn't mean you have to like forgive or look past the nature of their regime, their transgressions, or just to kind of suck up to them because they're doing something that you perceive might improve, you know, the price of the orange coin. It's just one of these blatant elephant, like people complain about civil rights abuses domestically and in the US and in the UK and a bunch of this other stuff. But here you've got like an actual human, you know, a regime which abuses human rights and is authoritarian in nature. And for some reason that doesn't matter because we're united over this orange coin thing. I just think it's fucking intellectually lazy. It's intellectual cowardice, and you can still make the argument for the whole nation state BTC angle without sucking this guy off. You know, and I don't know. I'm just quite shocked that how easy it is to look past this. Apparently, you know.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what she usually posts, I'm not surprised, but. That must be one of the worst takes I've ever seen.
It's one of the worst. It's awful, isn't it? It's like, who the fuck are we getting in bed with? Why is this? This isn't a good person fundamentally. Like, if your government did a fraction of what his government did when it got in power, you'd be fucking up in arms, you know. Christ.
I mean, it's basically like people coming from the first world, right?
Yes.
Especially America and Europe, that have no idea what is going on in different countries all over the world. And then think everywhere is like better than where they're coming from,
yes.
Not realizing how fortunate they are in like being born or being raised in the country that they are. It's mind-boggling every time. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I don't know. I just we need to be careful with our bedfellows, if you will. And I don't think he should rank particularly highly on that list. And I'm already getting some awful replies to that tweet as expected. But whatever, fuck it. I think I'm happy to die on that hill. I don't think it's even terribly controversial to say, let's not blow the authoritarian dude. Since when is that a hot take? Whatever, just Western privilege bullshit, I guess, right? Cool. I don't know if you want to do markets first or kind of the newsy stuff, or maybe we can even ask the chat what they want to, which direction they want to go in, because we could talk about technicals and your bottom buys and kind of discuss that. I've got a bunch of news articles and other stuff to look through as well, so
yeah, let's go through them first, and then first the news and then everything else.
The news and everything else. Okay, cool. Yeah. Let's do it. So, first things first. Let me scroll up and see this. This is the block. One sec. Okay. First of all, more DeFi news, and doesn't even involve Wonderland. This is the. Have you seen this? The Qubit Finance was hacked for 80 million. So we're starting off 2022 hot. Within the space of 28 days of the first month of this year, we've had the Wonderland X Quadriga whole crazy shit, and then also the biggest exploit of the year so far for 80 mil. I don't know. I don't know what to do with this news. The way I discussed it yesterday is this is such a fucking colossal self-own on our behalf that whatever hard-handed, unreasonable regulation hits DeFi in the next year or two, it's going to be so easy to justify. It's going to be so fucking easy to justify because you look at all the stereotype arguments that it's used by criminals and for money laundering, etc. It's now, you don't even need to fucking speculate or infer or do anything else. We're giving them on a silver platter concrete examples that this shit is unsafe, people lose a shit ton of money, and in the in the Wonderland example, there are shady operators, to say the least, at the center of these enormous treasuries. Where I was even kind of implying that maybe this is some sort of fucking op. Just like a government project to discredit DeFi. I didn't obviously believe that, but it's just it's a self-own on such a massive, colossal scale, which invites any regulation in the world and makes it easy to justify. It's like we just went down the DeFi stereotypes checkboxes and ticked all of them at once to invite heavy-handedness from whoever wants to fucking nuke this stuff. Yeah, it's just so it's embarrassing to an extent. I don't know what you think, but it's just disappointing,
Yeah, it's a very, very dark day in crypto, I feel like. I think it's, even though a lot of people realize how bad it is, I think it's still, people don't quite realize how bad it is. Because, like you said, it's basically just giving everyone an excuse to go and hit crypto hard. And for good reason, right? I mean, when you have something like Quadriga happen, it's already bad enough. And then when people in the inner circle of that stay around and get into a position of power like that, very, very problematic, I think. And we'll hear. I think it's going to be a topic in the next year, 2 or 3. And it's really bad.
Thing is, if we're going to be honest, with the Wonderland situation, I'm sure everyone's kind of read up. The TLDR version is this whole Frog Nation massive, DeFi movement, essentially, with Wonderland being one of the biggest and, built up a massive treasury and fan following, etc. And Danny being on its face, one of the essentially co-founders, treasury managers, faces of the project. Wonderland specifically was a bloke called Sifu, right? 0x Sifu. And it turns out, as Zach revealed, that this guy was, one of the... was he a co-founder of Quadriga?
I think so.
Yeah, so either way, he was quite high up in the Quadriga management. And famously, Quadriga's the one which had a bunch of customer funds. Then the founder went to India and died under suspicious circumstances. It's like a super shady crypto story, right? And now it turns out that this co-founder of Quadriga, who has an extensive history, as far as I understand, of scams and fraud and all sorts of shady shit on the internet, even predating the Bitcoin days. He was one of the, top guys or in the management of this famous, much-loved DeFi protocol and team alongside Daniel, right? Or Danny, I should say. Now, that's fucking crazy, right? So crypto just casually recycles bad actors. But it comes to a broader point, which I know you definitely feel strongly about, that if you're assuming that acting in good faith and trying to preserve your reputation, integrity, etc., is a plus EV thing to do, if the premise is to sort of maximize financial gain or whatever, it really isn't, right? You're wrong. Because over the last 5 years, it's become abundantly obvious that there are essentially no sanctions for dancing in the grey area, to say the least. People have incredibly short-term memories when it comes to duplicitous or bad faith actors or whatever else there is. So if you're going to be integrity-oriented, that's something for you, right? That's something you put on your shelf and for you to enjoy, and that's your thing. If you're of the belief that I'm going to avoid X and do Y and always be transparent and not do sort of these deals and stay away from the grey areas, etc., if you have a belief that that's going to somehow help you, in pure financial terms in the medium to long term, you are sorely mistaken. Like, reputation is, if you're being very cynical about it, just becomes part of the EV calculation. And what the weight of the evidence over the last at least 5 years suggests is that it doesn't fucking matter, right? If anything, if you come out sort of, I mean, Don knows I disagree with his moral crusade type of thing, but if you go out on that front, if anything, that's going to adversely affect your financial opportunities, because people aren't going to want to give you opportunities, deal flow, because you're like a fucking white knight of the internet, right? So I just think it's like a useful springboard to talk about the fact that we're terrible at self-policing in crypto, and there's no obvious upside to quote-unquote playing by the book, while there are tangible downsides to like avoiding grey areas and trying to be a goody two-shoes. So the cynics win on that one. What do you think, Duck?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm known in the influencer circles as like the white knight that you don't want to get involved in, so involved with. So it's kind of like, I don't know, when you speak out, you're gonna get less deals. I've noticed pretty much in any sector, like any good deals, it's really hard to get them, like any pre-sales, any kind of that stuff, if you ever talk about any scams that are going on. Because at the end of the day,
they're not scams, they're asymmetrical,
yeah,
capital deployment opportunities.
The thing is, like, at the end of the day, almost everyone is somehow involved in a scam or something that is close to one anyway. So if you should talk one of them, you should talk all of them. And that's just not going to do you any good. I still do it because I don't give a shit. I can make my money trading. I don't need to kind of have like all the pre-sale stuff, even though that's nice because basically free money during some certain parts of the cycle, especially when you're like an influencer type that could easily kind of take advantage of that. But yeah, I agree with you. If you kind of dance around the gray line, going into the criminal side of things, even, you're going to make a bunch of money in crypto, and the repercussions have been pretty much non-existent, right? So it's kind of sad to see. It's something that I've gotten used to. I've seen it with the ICOs in 2017. I've seen it with a bunch of pretty much
IDOs.
Yeah, you can go through the list. Every 2 or 3 months, a new thing comes up where people just very obviously fleece either like their followers or just random market participants for their money. And so far, nothing's really been happening on that front. Is what it is. I've kind of gotten used to it. It's sad, and it's always something that brings my mood down. So I don't really comment on it much nowadays.
Right.
Because nothing changes. I've given up on it.
So if you're listening, I disagree with the Dark. Give me all the deal flow and I won't tell him a fucking thing. Yeah, no, I agree. And there's also no upside to calling this kind of shit out, right? And it's like a glass house type of thing, and there's a lot of spillover and contagion risk and yada yada. And the thing is, there are proper opportunities in crypto where you can act as an angel or seed investor and so on. But when it's just like the whole market's up 15,000% and it's like the 8th IDO of the month, and yeah, it reaches a certain point where it's quite clear where the asymmetry is. And it's one of those things where they'll say like, "Oh, I'm an investor," and then they'll shill you the IDO, but that doesn't fully incorporate the enormous asymmetry that's at play, because they're not like an investor at the price that you see when it gets fucking listed, right? They're already up multiples upon multiples by the time that happens. So there's like a world of difference. Like, it's just like me tweeting saying I'm long BTC. and I'm referring to my entry at 14k, and I'm actually going to sell 38k, you know? It's like, well, yeah, he said he's long, but it's like the circumstances and the actual facts and the terms at which he got long are completely different to what's essentially being offered to the public, right? Now, if it's a bull market, no one gives a fuck, because there's enough capital going around to soak up all that selling and maybe the post-listing performance, even if the quote-unquote insiders are up, you know, whatever multiples, that the market can still absorb that, and there's like a period where you could still do well. But the way most people get around it is they'll just say, I invested in X, and then shill you the listing, but even the moment it gets listed, they're already up a certain multiple that you're very unlikely to see yourself, you know? But using the very simple language basically conveys some sort of symmetry between them and their audience, but that symmetry doesn't exist. Whatever. This topic fucking sucks, right? It doesn't matter. More news. This is good news. I actually like this. I don't know if you saw, Don. Crypto leaders launch Political Action Committee, a PAC, to back congressional candidates. It's all the people we know. Dan from CMS and Vance from Framework and Ryan from FTX, and the big backers or additional backers are, you know, Multicoin Capital, Blockchain Capital, and Moocher's Skybridge Capital. And they plan to spend more than 20 mil in the 2022 cycle, and is currently evaluating candidates, yada yada. Now, it's about fucking time we get some crypto lobbying with teeth behind it, right? Because increasingly, as we become an institutionalized asset and all of this other stuff, and people care about crypto, it was always insane to me, having seen how much we've grown and then how little fucking money we had to deploy towards political causes and lobbying and making sure the industry doesn't get regulated into zero the next day. Like, before all the, you know, the infrastructure bill crypto shit blew up, just like months before that, I think Coin Center's operating budget was like less than 2 million a year or something, right? It was like 1 point something million per year, and that was like our biggest you know, think tank lobbying instrument that we had for the entire industry. 2 million, or like, you know, 1.5 million, whatever it was. I mean, those are joke numbers, right? Like, market cap goes like a million X every single fucking cycle, and Coin Center is still like scraping pennies off the floor, trying to make sure the entire industry doesn't get regulated into oblivion. It never made any sense, and we've spoken about this on this show before. I think even on like Casual Fridays and stuff, and we spoke to Jake on the podcast and on, you know, at different points. But thank God this is finally happening, because we've had the money for it. Sometimes you just got to play by the rules, as in like how lobbying works, in order to protect your interests. And I'm glad these smart people have thrown some money behind this and recognize its importance. I think this sums it up perfectly. Dan saying this is long overdue, isn't it just?
Yeah, I mean, it should have been around 5 years ago.
Yes.
But I mean, better late than never.
Yes.
And I agree with you. I'm actually surprised that we haven't been regulated out of existence yet. So, I mean, maybe that changes something.
I hope so. I hope so. And people are memeing Sam because he donated like whatever it was to Biden. They're saying, look, all this fucking FUD coming from Treasury, etc. I don't think that's exactly how it works, but yeah, at least we've got something to point to now. And, you know, I like all the names I see on this as well. These aren't like fucking opportunists or someone like just trying to raise for something duplicitous. These are what I think are good faith crypto incumbents interested in doing the right thing for our industry. So more power to them, right?
Agreed.
This was quite big news to me, at least. I mean, I wasn't expecting the opposite, but SEC rejects Fidelity's proposed spot Bitcoin ETF. Now, I don't remember who asked me when we discussed this. I just thought in general the likelihood of a spot ETF was quite low this year, given how just Gensler talked about it and the general tilt of the SEC. But it wasn't on my radar that Fidelity had submitted a proposal. Now, Fidelity is like, I think, one of the biggest sort of asset managers in the US, right? They're like super well known, massively blue chip. Like, if anyone was going to get their ETF across, it probably would have been Fidelity, right? So the fact that they haven't, and the SEC rejected it, that probably means this is dead in the water for maybe another year at least. Or the exchange space would have to look completely different, like market structure-wise, in order for the SEC to approve something like this. But this is, I think, at least for this year or for the foreseeable future, a nail in the coffin for spot ETFs. Because if Fidelity can't do it, I mean, what are the chances that someone else can?
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be an uphill battle anyway, and I did not expect it to go through, but I agree with you. It's gonna take a while. I mean, it's always been that way. Like in crypto, we've been sitting here waiting for like a spot ETF for more than 4 years now, and I think it's gonna take it's gonna take another 4. I could see that honestly.
Yeah. It would have been bullish because spot ETF is really quite different from futures based ETF, and it actually becomes a physical black hole for Bitcoin, but in the good way, obviously. But yeah, that's not a thing. This is the one the story referenced earlier. DeFi protocol Wonderland is allegedly run. I mean, I get why they put allegedly, but I think the evidence is rather compelling, right? By Quadriga co-founder, Michael Patrin. And then there's some updates. Following the publication of the story, Sestegali has said in an official statement that 0x Sifu will be stepping down. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit too late on that, I think.
Yes.
Especially, I don't know if you saw like on Twitter, Danny like defending him and defending his choices of keeping him on board for as long as he did.
Oh yeah, he's like, I believe in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 10th chances with this guy. Because right? He's got like a my understanding, allegedly, in Minecraft, is that he's got like a multi-fucking decade history of shady shit on the internet. This isn't some goody two-shoes who just like stepped out of line a bit. I was like, oh, look at me, I'm so sorry, this is like someone like me. This is all that this guy is, So if anything, expecting him to change is just like asinine and naive. But the thing is, people think like that. My speculation is the following. The general understanding is that Danny is defending this guy out of like loyalty, and he's a good faith actor, and he genuinely believes that, he's changed, etc. I think that's fucking naive. My view is that guy knows where the fucking bodies are hidden, There's like a sort of mutually assured destruction there, where he knows all of his secrets, and he knows all of fucking his secrets, and there's no winner that comes out of it. So of course he has to fucking double down and try to protect him and soften the blow, because there's a good chance that, there's some skeletons in both closets, to use a weird idiom. I don't know what you think of that, but I didn't buy it for a second.
I mean, he's either the most naive, most idiotic person on the planet.
Yes.
Or there's more to it, which both look really bad, right? You don't want to have stuff like projects backed by a massive idiot, but you also don't want to have projects backed by someone that willingly has scammers on board or even has something to do with it, which I'm not saying. I have no idea if he's done anything shady or not. It's just kind of the people that you surround yourself with speak a lot about yourself, I feel like. And if you have like a serial scammer around you, good chance that you knew about it anyway. So, yeah.
I mean, the thing we mentioned earlier about history, at least in this article, it says he once pleaded guilty to operating Shadow Crew in 2002, a now defunct marketplace that trafficked stolen credit card and bank numbers. And then, just 5 years later in 2007, he also admitted guilt in separate criminal cases for burglary and computer fraud. This is like, this isn't out of character, Like, if he started being a good faith actor, that would be fucking out of character. Like, hey, what happened to Michael? He's not being, he's not breaking the law. So yeah, I don't really know how to square that circle in terms of I believe in second chances. Like, mate, he's like a fucking cat. He's got 8 lives, whatever. I just think it's a bad look for crypto, and it's like quintessential, bear market dog shit kind of stuff going on, where everyone's just got way too much time, and people get mega greedy and slip up and find out, and there's all this drama, and the drama's then used as like a precursor for heavy-handed regulation. And the whole thing started because it's a fucking fork of Olympus, which in itself is like a very Ponzi-oriented type of setup. There are fucking layers to this,
Yeah. Crypto in a nutshell. People never cease to amaze me with the ways they kind of cheat others out of money. It's actually insane.
It's consistently one of the worst signals for the market when forks of forks are getting just like a ton of traction, and there's this crazy rotation game going on where there's no like actual innovation. It's just you fork something that's worked because you want a new group of people to be early to something, you know? There's nothing new being... Most of the time, there's no new value being built. You know, we had that with DeFi and food tokens when you had like 1 million of them because a couple did well. You had it with Olympus forks as well. It's actually one of the most consistent fucking market top signals in general, right? When you move from innovation and new stuff and like clear trends and rotation to this fucking musical chairs, fork everything and try to make something where you can be early every other week. And I even wrote about that in a tweet, you know, the whole PvP, PvE type of thing. I'm just going to bring it up real quick. This one here, where it says, you know, in PvP markets, dog money doesn't cut it anymore. You're deep diving blockchain infrastructure layers and curve war Discord servers for an edge. Like, it's the fucking same thing here, right? You have, like, comparatively to where it was, like, Solana good coin, long Solana for, like, a fucking year. It moves from that to just, like, deep, on a relative basis, like, deep, very technical projects and forks and all sorts of, you know, the moment you add layers of obscurity and forks and all this other non-straightforward shit, it says something, right? Especially when you compare it to just being long, just, you know, like a Solana or a Dogecoin or whatever else. You know you're in a different market when that kind of stuff is the focus.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's just whenever it gets difficult, most people should honestly stop trading, but you kind of get taught by the market that you should never stop being in position in a bull market, right? Yeah. Because numbers go up, you just rotate from one thing into the other, you make a bunch of money, and it goes up and up and up and up. And every time you take a break, you kind of lose out on opportunities. And then you kind of get used to that. And the moment the market gets a little bit more difficult or even goes down, like it has been, you're still in that mode, right? Everyone feels like that. I still need to be in action the entire time. And then it gets a little bit more difficult and you're kind of fucked if you're not betting right?
Where do you think it got difficult, right? Because obviously the whole joke is that CT will always tell you about risk management after a 50% move down, right? Or they'll like always tell you to take profits after the market's already nuked. And it's something similar with trading conditions, right? They'll tell you to wait for the easy or wait for PvE, whatever, when the market's already been fucking PvP for like 2 months or something. In your mind, when was the sort of, not obvious inflection point, but at least where you had like some pretty good evidence that, hey, you know, the music suddenly, it's at least getting quiet if it's not over completely?
I think the first sign that you got was basically Bitcoin losing the 60K breakout.
Right.
That was a pretty big, okay, we might be in trouble moment. But I think you could have ignored that and still been fine. Like the musical chairs and altcoins went on and on, regardless of that. I think the second sign, and the one where like most people that ignored even the Bitcoin breakdown kind of opened their eyes to it, was when ETH lost 4K.
Right.
That is where I think even the slower, bigger players noticed that something was going on. And at that point, it got PvP. Like everyone's just kind of scrambled for liquidity and for kind of getting out of their positions, or in general, like there hasn't been much new money coming in my opinion, at least not in Bitcoin and ETH. The new money has been concentrated on scammy metaverse game tokens, whatever.
Private allocation type of...
Yeah. So people kind of, that never really cared about crypto, and I think Kobe said it best. They just never cared about crypto, got in after a massive run to kind of be early to the metaverse stuff, while they've been massively late to pretty much everything, and they just throw money at it because I want to be early this time. And then that's where the new money came in, and those projects haven't done well either. So I think basically those two, when you see Bitcoin lose an all-time high breakout and then ETH lose an all-time high breakout, it's bad news.
Yeah. It's impressive how fucking one-sided this trend has been, huh? Like, you look on the weekly time frame, there are no fucking bounces. Like straight up, no fucking bounces. 4K, the best level ever, gave you a tiny green candle before it nuked. Then the higher low level gave you again a small green candle before it got fully engulfed. It's just like impressively hard to trade. That's kind of why you have to sell on the way up, or you panic early. Those are your two options, right? Because if you think that you're guaranteed some sort of significant rally, lower high, etc., in order to exit, you might still get it, but the distance it travels before it offers you that bounce is probably going to make you very fucking uncomfortable. And even then, it's not guaranteed.
Unpumped Gem says markets are always PvP. I disagree heavily. Most of the time, especially in crypto, you have a bunch of people that are trying to get in, right? So we are already in as crypto natives, right? We're chilling in the market. And then you have a bunch of people come into the market, which makes our life really, really easy because they're going to like go down the distribute, like they're going to distribute across a few coins, and most likely it's going to be a few of the coins that you hold. And then the market just generally floats upwards, and you don't have to fight anyone for that to happen. You can just chill. When the market goes sideways or like after a big run, that situation changes, right? Once that new money flow stops. And then you actually have to fight the other market participants to make money trading the market. And so basically your boat got lifted the last few, now almost last few years. And now it's a little bit different. Now you have to kind of fight for your share. And if you're weaker than the others, you're going to get taken apart.
Yeah. Agreed. And I wrote about that, even in the PvP and PvE note, I wrote that markets are technically always PvP because, there's a short, very long, etc. It's more about the environment. I'm just going to drop it in the chat if anyone can be bothered to read it. It's a pretty short note. Okay, final bit of news. This is the thing that got me yesterday, right? So you will have seen this on Bloomberg, and then the crypto outlets reported it as well. Putin is in favor of regulating crypto mining in Russia. Report, and it stems from a Bloomberg report on the same thing. Putin backs crypto mining despite Bank of Russia's. This shows that I'm poor because I haven't got the Bloomberg subscription, obviously. But yeah, Putin backs crypto mining despite Bank of Russia's hard line, or, quite even stronger wording from the bloc, arguably, in favor of regulating crypto mining in Russia. I don't think this is true. Like, I genuinely don't think this is true. And I was reading Russian sources, and it's dubious at best, but kind of, if there was a gun to my head, I'd just say it's false. And that's for the following reason. So here's some actual Russian news, right? So what Putin said, so basically what you had is the central bank said that we should nuke crypto. This is me paraphrasing, summarizing, etc., right? So the central bank was anti-crypto, and then the Ministry of Finance was like, nah, there might be something here. Maybe we shouldn't nuke it. And so Putin was like, hey, you two, like fucking squabbling children, could you come to some sort of, consensus position or agree on this so we know how to approach and regulate these things? And in discussing crypto, he simply acknowledged that Russia has an advantage, or would have an advantage, in crypto mining because of excess electricity production in a few regions. That's pretty fucking different from some sort of state endorsement, which is how it was being interpreted, right? Also, like, the game theory considerations don't really make a ton of fucking sense. If he wanted to throw his weight behind it, I doubt he would just publicly announce it before taking measures, and you'd see some weird hash rate stuff come up, etc., etc. Yeah, it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny, in my opinion. And then there's like another article. This is 27th, so this was yesterday. The press secretary, just when asked about this, specifically when asked about the Bloomberg report, said, no, those proposals haven't been formulated whatsoever. That's it.
Seems pretty clear to me, yeah.
Seems pretty one-sided, right? So now again, it could be the case that this is some politicking going on. It could be the case that ultimately they do discuss this and Russia decides to take a larger, national role in it. But how it was presented in Western media, for me, having read Russian sources, doesn't seem accurate. And I'm not making some grandiose claim, because this is the press secretary commenting on explicitly the Bloomberg article saying no. So maybe I'm missing some context, but at the very least, it's not as straightforward as it was reported. DB just tweeted some more Russian regulation stuff, I think literally just now. Russian authorities draw up roadmap to regulate cryptocurrencies, document seen by Reuters, supported by all agencies except by the Bank of Russia. No ban on ownership. Allow exchanges to only be provided by Russian banking orgs. Ouch. Would block foreign exchanges, but suggest they could obtain licenses to operate. Representative for Deputy Prime Minister confirmed the document's authenticity. I mean, even this is really quite different from what was being said about mining and excess electricity, right? This seems more like a standard national regulatory framework. A, about ownership, and B, about exchange service provision. I know we're majoring in the minors a little bit, no pun intended, but I just read a bunch of those headlines, and you can tell I'm a lazy piece of shit because it took me like a full day to be like, maybe I should read the Russian news to see how true this is. And the answer turned out is it's the generous version is it's not entirely clear. The eye test version is it just seems to be a misinterpretation. It doesn't seem to be true at the moment. The whole mining angle thing, And then I had to make fun of the Americans being like, as always, you're making up fake news about Russia. That just had to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why, but in crypto, everything that can be spun in a certain positive way is spun in that way, which makes it look really, really bad. I feel like when anyone comments of anything about crypto that can be spun in a positive way, it will be spun that way by the talking heads of crypto. And we just look like idiots every time, right? Because it's more often than not just not true. It goes in the right direction, but people always just kind of go way over the top with it, making it worse than if they said nothing at all, basically. I feel like it's just so tiresome seeing the pomps of Twitter or crypto in general just kind of misinterpret news, or in general just make stuff up to make the space look good, because it kind of makes us all look like we have no leg to stand on if we have to make shit up, right? There's plenty of stuff that you can talk about that is positive. You don't have to kind of search for stuff that isn't really true to kind of make fit or whatever. I don't know. I hate when we have false news circulating around, everyone circle jerking each other. Just makes the entire industry look bad.
I mean, hey, look, if we like Bukele, then Putin's a fucking angel, right? So I'm looking forward to that part. Yeah, I'm just gonna fucking stay away from the politics, shouldn't I? I still want to go back there for New Year's and shit. So, that wasn't sarcastic, just to be clear. My comment, Anyway, anyway. Oh yeah, Litecoin Walmart. That's a banger example. That was a great trade as well. I don't know if you traded that. I shorted that shit. It was fun.
Yep.
Okay, enough news stuff. Hopefully that was fun, semi-comprehensive, whatever. I haven't got any fun Twitter things. I don't know if you did. I mean, we started with a fun Twitter thing. Well, it wasn't really fun. I just got tilted. But I haven't really got anything else that stood out on the old newsfeed. Did you?
No, not really.
Okay. So on the markets side of things, as per the title, it's about your bottom longs, of course, buying around 30k. It's 30. What is it? 34-ish?
30. That was 33 something.
Yeah. So
on average, very, very low. I actually got very, very close to the bottom of the wick.
Very nice.
Very happy with that entry. And I think in general, I'm going to at least hold through the weekend if nothing crazy happens.
Yeah.
But I think in general, probably going to hold it for longer. Right now, the daily actually looks pretty good, but I can go through everything.
Yeah, let's do it.
Explain my reasoning. Let me quickly throw up screen share. So let me know if it works or not.
It looks good.
So monthly, like whenever I have the monthly chart at support, I get more attentive of the lower time frames. And right now it kind of looks pretty good, right? I commented on this when we were trading at 33-ish. That it was like trading below the monthly support, but that's not a big deal because that can just be the wick. And right now it kind of looks like that. And it just has to stay around for 3 more days to actually look pretty decent, right? Like a close at support, not the worst thing in the world. That doesn't have to mean it goes back to 60K, but even if it goes back to mid-range, that might not be a big move on the monthly, but that is a big, big move from my entry, right? 33 all the way to like 44-ish. That's a good trade. 30% on the Boomer coin, always nice.
Yes.
So that's kind of what
especially because you're using 100x leverage, right? So
yes. That's why I got the bottom of the week, right? It's 100x leverage if it went 1% against.
Yeah, like 8 sub accounts liquidated with the 9th one fucking caught it.
Well, worth it, totally worth it. But yeah, that's the monthly, right? At support, not looking too bad. I mean, obviously not looking too good either. You generally don't want support to be tested over and over again. But in this case, on the monthly, it's actually not too bad because this is how the support formed. This is the first test, right?
Yes.
That's why I was so high conviction that was going to hold, at least for a little bit. And then on the weekly time frame, it's also like it also went into my support area, which made it relatively easy. When you have like those 2 big time frames play together, then you just wait for basically sentiment to flip. This is one of the best bear or sideways market trades that you can get. Is you just look at high time frames and you wait for Twitter to lose their shit. And if they don't lose their shit at support, it's probably not the support you want to buy. But if they start losing their shit, pretty decent support. And I mean, in this case, we bounced pretty nicely. Still not out of the woods. And I think in general could go back to 34K.
Yeah, what would that mean, right? Because if you think about how we did it on Technical Roundup, the newsletter, before we updated the level to reflect, that it's a bit more recent, what we had was the highest close of that former consolidation as as a cluster entirely. This kind of support resistance at 38K, right?
Yeah.
Because at the time we just boxed out the whole thing and said 32 to 38K, 32 to 38K. Also, because we're like, I think this is like quintessentially European of us. We didn't pat ourselves on the back in the most recent newsletter, even though, like, hand on heart type of deal, the newsletter flipped bearish as soon as the weekly was lost and has been arguing 32 to 38K from about, 60K?
Yeah.
Or roughly
55.
thereabouts. So that's like a good move, that's a fucking tap on the shoulder, good job type of thing. I have to get that out there somewhere, right? People,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot more auto fellatio for a lot less. So sometimes it's nice to see that high time frame TA stuff and being patient and shit is reasonable. So thank you to fucking Technical Roundup, which trades better than I do, that's for sure. But in any case, we had this as an ultimate, downside move target for the range low, right? The basic premise was range high 60-ish, range low 38 to 32-ish, and then range midpoint mid-40s, right? Yep. But the specific level that we had was made up of the bottom of the range at 32, which is untested, right? And then the top of the range at 38. If we look at the weekly closes, you could make a case that it closed back into the range on this weekly, and it's currently acting as resistance. Like, do you give a shit? Have you adjusted your views? What will you do if it comes down to retest what would be previous week's low and trade closer to the 30K handle itself? Like, how have your views changed in terms of what's above us?
So in general, I feel like the resistance that we have at 38K is an important one. I'm gonna look at that towards the weekly close. So if we just mega rally into the weekend and then chill around 41K on Sunday, I don't really mind. Then we just broke that resistance. If we get stuck at 38K, I could see myself close and kind of try to relong 34.
Okay.
Just basically have a mini range in the bigger picture. The problem is, and I mean, a lot of people have been kind of talking about like bidding 30K, which is even below the lowest kind of number that we said, which was 32K.
Sure.
The problem I see with that is that if we go there, I could see us completely wipe out. Because what we've basically been doing, and this is a fair warning to like the people that have like been building longs or whatever, what we've been basically doing is we've been bleeding, right? There's not been capitulation. There's not been any kind of great leverage kind of shakeout or any panic event. We've not had any of that. We just basically bled down and had a neutral candle this week. So if we go back to those lows that a bunch of people are trying to bid for whatever reason, I don't get it, at 29, maybe 30K, I think what we could do is we hit that, bounce a little bit, and then completely smash through, and maybe not go below 20K, but like in that area. And then you're completely fucked, right? You're sitting in a long from 30K and prices immediately teleported to 20K. I don't want to be in that position. So for me, I've kind of taken the bet that this bleed out is pretty close or already finished. And we're going to see a bounce before maybe we get the leverage shakeout or like in general the liquidation event. But I think if we do get it, it's not going to be as shallow as, okay, it's going to 30K. So for me, basically, I'm waiting for the weekly close. If it's above 38, I'm going to keep my position. If it's below, I'm going to sell it.
Don is just like the classic, you know how traders say all this fucking dog shit that no one follows? Like, oh, don't look for the tops and bottoms, go for the meat of the move. I don't know a single fucking good trader that trades like that. I'm not even joking. I can't think of one example of someone who does that. And this is like a classic version of that, where what you're essentially saying is, if I didn't long the bottom, I'm getting the fuck out. Like, if my entry isn't the Pico low, I don't want this position anymore. I think that's fine. I think it's totally reasonable. But it just like sounds funny if you compare it to like, oh, the trend is your friend and wait for confirmation and the meat of the move, yada yada. It's like no one fucking follows these things. Like no one at all.
Yeah, the problem is that all these people that say, okay, follow the trend, blah, 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 get the meat of the move. What they're basically saying is, okay, we're in a bull market, in a raging bull market, you just blindly buy, right? Or we're shorting, we're in a raging bear market. But the thing is, we're not in either of those things right now. We're in a range, right? And if you're waiting for confirmation, or if you're waiting for whatever kind of metrics that you have to flip back bullish, you're buying the top. I'm almost guaranteeing that to you, that if you have any kind of trend following systems, they're going to flip bullish back at the Pico top of this.
So likely, that's what happens in a range.
Yeah, that's how ranges work. They fuck up everyone. And this is a classic range. We've been talking about this being a range for months now. And I mean, look at it. How beautiful of a range is that, right? It hit roughly the same level on the upside. It's hit the same level on the downside 3 times. It's perfectly ranging, right? If it breaks down, then we start getting into a trending environment.
Below this level, it's lights out, bro. It's lights out.
No, the funny thing is, like, this is still like a range, and if it breaks below 30K, that's where it technically becomes bearish, which is like 50% below the high, more than 50%. It's absolutely mental, but that's how crypto works, right? It went from 4K to 70K. It just, the moves are much more exaggerated, yes. And you gotta be ready for it. But right now we're in a range, and if you don't treat it as a range, as in if you don't give it the respect it deserves, which basically is you buy support, sell resistance, otherwise you're gonna get fucked, then have fun buying the tops and selling the bottoms, because I mean, nothing else is going to happen to you if you trade the normal way in a ranging environment. Because basically what you have to kind of do before you take a trade every time is you have to think, okay, what kind of market am I trading? Is this like is a bullish trending one, is a bearish trending one, or is it choppy one or ranging one? And then you have to adjust your strategies accordingly. Obviously, it's not always easy to kind of determine what kind of market it is, but you're more often than not going to be right on your trade idea if you get the market conditions right? So if it's a bullish trending market and you kind of identify that, right, and you buy the first shitty support level that you can find, you're probably going to be right. And same with the bearish markets, same with the trendless markets. It's just you have to kind of figure out what is this market actually doing before you articulate a trade plan.
Well said. Yeah, I agree. Like if you're in a shitty downward range and you're buying, it's like holding a fucking bomb, right? You're looking to get rid of it as quickly as you can. Whereas if it's like uptrend and you get something that looks like a shallow pullback, not the best entry in the world, like sometimes one red candle, you're like, oh my god, this is God's gift, you know? And you ride it into the sunset, but it depends entirely on the conditions, I agree. I sort of posted something similar which got some people just had questions about it, where I said Bitcoin trend down, 30k support, 40-45k overhead, Duma 10 to 20k, maybe this bit was spicy, but whatever. Macro looks rough. For what it's worth, I bought BTC at the bottom of the range, but then global macro went to zero, is one of the least regrettable ways to lose money if we get rolled, right? And I thought that was pretty straightforward as a premise, but apparently it wasn't, and it ended up being controversial. But the basic idea is, if the conditions are shit, the only trades which are A, just plus EV on average, i.e. have a positive average outcome, and B, the ones which you're not going to regret, are those which are done at the extreme, right? So if you take a range, and this is the range high, for example, this is the midpoint, and this is the, oops, I can draw a slightly straighter line than that, and this is the range low. So the way Bitcoin did it is essentially broke out, fell back within the range high, and went down in a straight line. So in terms of the setups available to you on a high time frame, should you feel like a dickhead if you bought the underside after the failed retest of the range high and then got stopped out on the move lower? You probably should, right? Because it's like one of the worst places to trade immediately after a bearish pattern and a failed breakout. So that's like not really justifiable, and it's just not one of those areas where you'd feel good about taking risks. Like, I think my unpopular take on this is that in most cases, people genuinely know what a good setup looks like and what doesn't, you know? Like, if you have, like, decent experience, your eye test can probably just protect you from shitty setups, and your gut has an inclination to where you should trade and where you shouldn't trade. So if you do that there, you probably feel bad about it, and it's justified. At the range midpoint, it's kind of a coin toss. I think if you were playing bounces from the range midpoint, you can justify that, especially because the market structure, this was like the do or die higher low area, so that makes sense. But if you faded the breakdown, and I had specific tweets saying I'm not fucking fading the breakdown because that's the range midpoint failure, if you longed that, then again, how good should you feel if you get stopped out? Like, not very, because it had a chance to bounce, it had a chance to make a higher low, but if it broke down and then you bought it trying to knife catch, you should feel like a bit of a prick, right? Now, the thing about the range low is if you're going to make a bet anywhere within the structure, it fucking has to be at the range low, right? It's the extreme, it's closest to your invalidation, it's where the risk to reward is highest, it's when you'll probably find out soonest whether your idea is right or wrong. Like, all the good stuff in terms of punting, by definition, will happen at or through the range low because it's an extreme that's so close to your invalidation. So that's the point I was making there. Like, if you longed this and got stopped on a shitty trade, you kind of should feel bad, or feeling bad is justified. Same for the range midpoint breakdown. But if you do that at the range low and it's a losing trade, I don't think you should have any regret whatsoever, right? Because that, if anything, come on, dude, like, anecdotally, it's pretty fucking Chad. Like, yeah, I waited for BTC at 30k, bought the bottom of the range, and then equities went to zero and World War III happened, but I'd fucking take that trade again, you know? Like, I can respect that type of reasoning much more so than, like, deploying all your capital at areas which are marginal at best, if not outrightly bearish, and then when it gets to an area where the bet itself is most attractive, you have fuck all left. I think that's much more regrettable than the alternatives. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's basically the same situation that we have right now with the support that we're at.
Yes.
Which is you could the people that are bidding basically for the breakdown of this range, because we have range, like you said. The people that are trying to knife catch 28, 29, right? What they're basically trying to do is do the exact same thing that you just said you should feel like a prick about, which is kind of the midpoint of the range retest, and then it fails and it heads lower. It's basically the same thing, right? You break the range to the downside, that's bearish. If you longed into that and it fails, should you feel bad about it? I think you should be. The one place where you can make that trade is when it kind of reclaims the range. So where's the one place that you can take a trade in this? Or like there's two places how you can trade this range. One, you buy the range low, which I did and you did as well. Or
I didn't buy the range low. Let me be transparent. I didn't get any fucking fills. I had the weekly level. I didn't get a fucking single penny filled. So no. I love the clout, but absolutely not. I am poor, sidelined, and seething.
Oh, I that's how I understood the tweet. But yeah, good to know. No, didn't I spam you with my bottom buys? Why did you not just hop in with me?
It's probably my assistant reading your messages. I can't fucking stomach them. So
fucking hell. No, but there's two places where you can take a trade in this instance, right? One, the range low, which I did, and then two, and I'm gonna take that trade if it presents itself, is breakdown into reclaim into fucking mega moon it. And I'm fine with taking the range low trade. I'm fine with taking this trade. I'm definitely not fine buying 28K, praying to God that no one bigger than me gets liquidated and prices go down like they did in March 2020. There's no fucking way that I want to take that risk. So there's two trades that you can take. I'm going to take both of them. That's how bullish I am at range low. It just makes sense to me. But yeah, that's why I don't know. I feel like whenever I read Twitter nowadays, I feel alienated because pretty much all of the people that I follow, or almost all of them, are just kind of targeting just below the range, which I feel like is a bad place to do business. But
that makes sense.
It's fine. Everyone can do whatever they want to, but definitely not the place where I'm going to get.
Thing is, the reclaim setup, it's not always pretty, but you got one at the last bottom. And I remember because we wrote about it in Technical Roundup, right? On this move here, we said that this close through support is a breakdown, and we're bearish until proven otherwise, and proving otherwise would mean reclaiming back above this weekly. And that's literally what happened the following week. You had a spike below previous week's low, which then closed above the level, and that's when the bias flipped. So it's not always going to be like a super clean reclaim. I imagine if we get another reclaim event, it might take a bit longer than literally one candle, next candle. But in any case, like those setups are actionable. And when they form, those kind of real high time frame failed breakdowns or failed breakouts, like even if you fucking mark it in the close, if the idea is correct, there's still like plenty to capture there, you know? This is an interesting question. I don't know how you view this market structure point. Hermes says, why is everybody ignoring November's higher high? Bear markets need a lower high first, brackets on the weekly time frame.
I mean, sure, you could argue that that's the case, and then we bounce to 40K, and then that's your lower high, and you kind of, like, what could happen is, right, we break to 14K, go back to 20 or 30K, and then we have a lower high then, and you have a bear market. And you waited all this time to have a confirmed bear market, and then the best you get is like a 30K retest before it goes into a true bear market. Like, you can wait for that, and then you kind of lose 75 to whatever, 80% of your money.
Can you imagine that the market's down like 80% and you're like, oh shit, I think the trend shifted. We're not making fun of the viewer, obviously, just I'm memeing the concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid concern. The problem is this market, or any market really, there's no rule to this. There's no one sitting behind like this market being like, okay, we have to follow the lower high rule, which means that we have to do like this and that.
Yeah.
A market can legitimately go up like this and then break down 80%. And I mean, why am I saying this? It's because we've been seeing this in crypto all the time, right? So it goes up straight, it goes down 80%. It's still in a bull market, right? But if you bought the top, that's not helping you much. And then it bounces like 50%, and then it heads down another 90%, right? And then you have the lower high, and you're like, okay, the lower high is confirmed after this low breaks.
Oh, yeah.
You're down 95% of your value, and you're like, okay, this is a bear market now.
At least I get market structure. I mean, the way I do it, what I found works better for me in crypto because it moves quicker. For me, a higher high is a break in market structure to the upside, and a lower low is a break in market structure to the downside. And there's no like confirmation I need for that bias to become actionable, especially if it's happening on like a high time frame, like the daily and the weekly. Like it takes a lot of money to shift high time frame market structure, you know? Like I take those signals seriously when I get the higher high or the lower low, and I don't wait for like basically another cycle or another like 20-40% volatility to confirm anything. And you can kind of marry two concepts together. Like when this shit took place, you know, the failed breakout above 60k, like what's the market structure argument at that point? It's a higher high, right? So then it either continues and makes like the higher low at the breakout level itself, or it makes the higher low on like a dip, right? Now we obviously failed to make to continue from the breakout level, hence why it ended up being a failed breakout. And that's why we wrote in Technical Roundup and, you know, on our streams, etc., that if there's going to be a higher low area, it's got to happen at the mid 40s. Because look, you've got low, high, higher low, higher high. If this isn't going to be enough for continuation, what's the candidate for the higher low? And it was this type of area, right? And then that area failed and was even retested before the next leg lower. So, like, you're getting a preponderance of evidence on the failed breakout. You know, you've got resistance there. The higher low fails. I just think it, like, especially on higher time frame stuff, it simply takes too fucking long to get like full confirmation of a lower high, lower low, and all this type of stuff, because the market's already moved like 80% or something and has given you like several back-to-back 20-40% legs, and you're still waiting for confirmation or whatever that means. So TLDR, I don't disagree with you in terms of just like market structure education, but I just think especially on high time frames, it's not very like practical. And what I've found works better, well, A, there are no rules, as Don said, but B, for me, the higher high or the lower low is enough. And then if I get a higher low or a lower high, that's like a fucking gift. You know, that's an awesome trade. But I don't wait for it to confirm the fact that market structure is broken, you know?
Yeah. Something I want to say in regards to, okay, but what do you actually do then if you can't necessarily get the lower high, or even with the lower low, that's quite far away, right? Something that you can do is just use a little bit of logic. Which is basically we broke, like this is a bearish setup, right? We almost always, like almost every stream talk about this, right? You get like a range, you break down, that's a bullish setup. And then the obvious kind of flip side to that is this is a bearish setup, right? And then you look at, okay, what has been happening in the last few years? Well, Bitcoin went from 4K to 70K. And now you're getting a bearish setup that should have been like, this is a bullish setup that failed basically, and as in a bullish breakout. So what you have is, after a massive move to the upside, you see the first sign of weakness, and you don't have to short this. I'm not telling you like everyone should be short from 60K, but at that point you kind of have to de-risk, in my opinion, because this is a really strong sign that something's afoot. You're up a shitload. It just makes sense to take some profits, I feel like. So you don't necessarily have to wait till the market structure breaks, because, I mean, even if you go with what Fred said, you're still going to lose almost half your money, right? From 70K to 40K.
Just a haircut, bro. It's fine.
Yeah, so, I mean, 60K was the kind of the cleanest exit, I feel like. It's the one that, if you look at the chart, even after like 5 years, this is gonna be like the cleanest thing that you're gonna see on the chart. So that's kind of my opinion on this, anyway.
Agreed. And yeah, there are no like fixed answers to this. Maybe you enter a regime where every single rotation is like super clearly defined by market structure, and you get the most overt higher lows and lower highs ever. Or you could get what we've had, which is, as soon as the breakout failed, it's just been down only with no visible high time frame bounces the entire way. So yeah, we'll have to see where all that ends up. Any final questions you want to talk about, Duck, or topics, themes? I've got, the only thing for me is the spoiler stuff, that I'm gonna try to finish the market microstructure video like tomorrow at the latest. This is the follow-up to the order flow video on my channel, which is a really bad video. It's actually just kept me up at night where I'm like, I hate that people reference my content and that video fucking exists because it's dog shit, right? I don't think that's a bad thing, because if you came to me and said, hey, it's been like 3 years or whatever since that video, have you learned anything new, or have your views changed at all? If I said no, that would be quite worrying, right? So it's not a bad thing that I, disagree with a lot of what I said, or I just think there are more important topics and a better way of addressing it. So I was kind of avoiding it for a while because this topic is massive, right? Microstructure, it's all about, you've got exchange nuances and spreads and all the HFT quant stuff. Like, it's a complete shit show, but, I could definitely do better than what's on the channel at the moment. So it's mostly done. I'd say it's like 70% done. The outline, until proven, maybe I refine it, but this is likely going to be it, is the usual disclaimer, general remarks, limit orders and market orders, bid-ask spread, liquidity, order clustering, liquidation cascades, order book analysis, market makers, and conclusion. And I've worked up to... Where am I? So I've just finished the liquidity section, and then I'm about to start the order clustering and stop-loss hunting bit. So that should be fun. That's kind of my leak / spoiler. Definitely within 48 hours, maybe tonight at a stretch. But yeah, I've been feeling like shit for basically a month now with small breaks in between. Normally I get videos done in a day. I know that makes me seem like really fucking lazy because I just do like one video every, 3 to 12 months, even though they ordinarily take me a day to do. But this is, taking longer because I'm dying and feeling like shit. But yeah, TLDR market microstructure video before the end of the week. That should be quite fun, and I'm sure Don's gonna proofread and tell me I got everything wrong.
No, so far, I mean, I still remember when we used to kind of chat about your slides, and there was like stuff that I could add from time to time, but nowadays it's just like there's nothing for me to add. It's just too good.
Too busy on your dates to read my fucking slides.
On my non-existent dates, on the dates where I get abandoned on the day of the date, is what it is. Life is
Fool me once, shame on you.
I mean, it's two different girls, right? So it's...
How do you know they're not in cahoots with each other? There's like a specific German subreddit about matching with you and like how to ruin your life.
One wasn't German though.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like a multinational conspiracy.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
gets bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Any final bits and pieces from the chat? I mean, like the video, obviously, if you haven't already. Give the newsletter at least a pat on the back for getting the 60 to 30 rotation. And look, if we all have to die and go to zero because global macro goes to zero, I will happily go down with that ship, Yeah.
I mean, what you should be doing, or what you always, I think you always should have some cash on the side.
Yes.
That's something that I've religiously been kind of doing, is just cashing some out to be able to take advantage of any crazy thing that happens. And it's done me really well over the years. It's done me well during the 2020 March crash. It's done me well during the 6K break. Even though like sometimes you want to be fully deployed most of the time. Like most of the time you're gonna be sitting there being like, I should be deeper. But then the one time that's not the case, the market disappears, you curse yourself, and then you're gonna capitulate the bottom because you're all in already. So always have a little bit money on the side. I'm not saying we're going to 14K, but I mean, I think there's a chance that we might. So if the global situation goes worse. So, I mean, be ready for that at least. And yeah, but for now, I'm still bullish, waiting for the weekly.
Yeah, just keep a doom suicide stack. And if you don't get to deploy it, good, because it means you didn't lose as much money. If you do get to deploy it, that's probably like legit a once every 1 to 2 year trade. And so you don't want to be caught with your pants down on those. There's no downside to having a doom stack. Like, literally make a fucking sub account or another wallet on wherever you trade, whatever you use, and call it your doom stack, and save it for if crypto falls apart and global markets fall apart and fucking exchanges go down and all sorts of shit happens. That doom stack could, set you up for the next quarter, year, whatever.
Yeah, that's the kind of once in a lifetime
Yes.
opportunity. And the good thing in crypto is that you get the once in a lifetime opportunity
Like every couple
other
of years.
week.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad. Yeah, every other
Yeah.
week for sure.
No,
Cool.
but yeah, that's I think the best advice
Agreed.
that anyone can give you.
Agreed. And thanks for the likes on the video. It's very kind of you. And yeah, hope you all have an excellent weekend. You included, Duck. We need a Tinder redemption arc. That's also when you know we're in a real bear market, where like the content is just like reaction videos and scrolling through Tinder with DonAlt. It's like, what the fuck is going on with these dudes? Yeah, so there's a fucking market indicator for you. That's all from us, though. Thank you to FTX for being our partners. Get the FTX app, buy some NFTs and altcoins for your family, and then just don't show up to joint holidays if things go poorly. If things go well, you're the Chad at whatever event you go to, which is, there's the real fucking asymmetric risk reward, right? If you win, you go parade in front of your family. If you lose, you just ignore them. I can't see how that could possibly go wrong. That's all from us. Have an awesome weekend. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube algo stuff. Leave a comment if you made it this far, and see you on Monday for Monday markets, or maybe a space where I just shout into my phone. We'll see. Don, thanks. Talk to you soon.